Hi, everybody.
Hello, we're
Linda
back.
Bloom, Charlie Bloom, here with you to do Facebook Live Thursdays Pacific Time. And today we're delving into a very important question. Is it possible to affair-proof your marriage or your relationship? I realize a lot of people aren't really doing a formal marriage ceremony with all the legal things to it, but they have a committed partnership and they've made vows to each other in a private way, maybe not in front of their family and community, but they vowed to monogamy and to be faithful to their partner. And it's really alarming to know that that particularly agreement gets violated more times than it doesn't. The Marital and Family Journal in 2015 gives the statistics for how many couples have a violation in their marriage of the fidelity vows. For women, it's not quite as high as it is for men. It's 54% of men and 54% of women and 57% of men have at least a one-night stand. When I read those statistics, which by the way are really hard to get because other studies, they're not as high as those because a lot of people lie on the inventory. Even though it's anonymous, they don't want to admit it, even though no one will ever see the answer of their questionnaire. I wasn't surprised that the majority of couples have an incident, at least one, of unfaithfulness. The part that really surprised me was the average amount of time that the affair went on was for 2 years. That's a lot of lying. That's a lot of deceit. That's a lot of cover up. That is a lot of acting as if and pretending with the person that you're supposed to be the closest to and keeping a lie under wraps. So it's traumatic when people get found out or confess. It's traumatic to the person who feels victimized by the affair. It's traumatic for the person who had the affair. They often feel guilt, they're in pain. It's a lot of pain on both sides. And one of the things that we want to bust up in our presentation today is the myth that we love each other, we've declared faithfulness and have this agreement in place, and our sex is good. So it's not going to happen to us, because everybody's shocked when the affair comes to light. And many of those people were under that impression that because they love each other so much and because they declared their faithfulness to each other, and even because the sex was good, that it wasn't going to happen to them. And it is possible to repair the damaged trust, but it's a lot of work and it takes a lot of time, and most couples don't have the wherewithal to do that kind of work, to do the repair. So we want to just talk about the kind of conditions that are in place when it goes off the road and the kind of conditions that are in place when it stays on the road and you can veer away from the infidelity.
All right. Well, I've sometimes been accused of being a man of few words. I've also been accused sometimes by Linda of being a man of too many words. So that being the case, whatever kind of a man I am, I'm going to give you the answer in a word. No. Okay. And of course, you know what the question is. The question is the title of this talk. Is it possible to affair-proof a marriage? And the answer is no. So if you take away nothing else from this talk, take that away. Because if you don't, if you are one of those people who may be under the illusion that if you have a certain kind of a marriage, if you're having a certain kind of experience with each other, if you're doing all the right stuff, if you love each other enough, if you, whatever it is that you think will affair-proof your marriage or your relationship, if you have that agreement, you're actually more at risk of having that happen than if you don't feel absolutely unconditionally trusting that you can and you are affair-proofing your marriage or your relationship. Problem is that when we think that we're doing everything that we need to do and that everything is in place and we're on kind of cruise control, that is one of the main factors that raises the risk of having an affair, because it's easy to go into a state of complacency and feel like things are in place, we're doing the right stuff, we're the right people, we both are committed to this. And it doesn't mean that there's going to be one. It just means that you want to be vigilant about not falling into cruise control. And you know what I mean by that? Mm-hmm. It's when you start to take each other for granted, start to make assumptions that aren't necessarily true, start to feel like you can afford not to pay close attention, that you can afford not to be as present or as attentive or as committed to building and strengthening the bonds in the relationship. When you slip into that, then you really are at risk of having one or both of you even stray. And that can happen when we think that we got this one handled. Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying, be afraid, be very afraid. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying, don't go to sleep on the job. Don't lull yourself into a state of complacency in which you are making assumptions and drawing conclusions that we got this one wired, we can afford to put it on cruise control, or even worse, when that phrase came up, there weren't self-driving cars. Now there are self-driving cars, so you can not only put it on cruise control, you can actually go to sleep. You don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. You don't want to do that. So we're here just to remind you to show up and wake up.
Mm-hmm. Now, there's an author that I have a great respect for. Her name is Esther Perel. She's a therapist, she's a marriage counselor, she's a teacher and a speaker, and she's written a wonderful book called The State of Affairs. And she speaks quite eloquently to a point about what leaves you at risk for an affair. Of course, if the sex isn't good and the love is ebbing away, that does put you at risk. But even if the sex is good and the love is there are other factors to consider. And when Charlie's saying stay awake and pay attention, these are the factors that we want you to pay attention to. She said what's motivating so many people to stray and look for love in all the wrong places and have the affair is they're really looking for aliveness. That their life has gotten boring, predictable. They've had too heavy on the security and the predictability, not enough on the novelty and adventure. Be willing to tell yourself the truth if you have slipped into that kind of a pattern. Sometimes people live in that kind of a pattern for years where they've made predictability and security too high a value, and they haven't really valued novelty, adventure, doing things that they have never done before, going places that they've never gone before, having conversations with people they've never had conversations with before, and having more meaningful, in-depth conversations with the people that are already in their life, like their lover. To be in discovery, to play the edge, to be willing to risk. So this aliveness it's a drive that we have. It's a need that we have to feel vital, to feel our passion, to feel our authenticity, to feel like we're learning and growing and experiencing things different, not the old ho-hum. Another crucial ingredient is some people are putting so much time and energy into their family life, like their kids, and kids require a lot of our time and devotion and attention, and our work. And to be successful in the workplace, it takes a lot of time and attention and our devotion. But if we give so much to those domains of our life, it's stealing and robbing from the vitality and the well-being of a romantic partnership. So if this is true for you and that you've allocated time and attention to places other than the vitality and the aliveness and the health and the well-being of your lover partnership, to be willing to tell the truth about that. Because when we wake up and pay attention and see where we may have slipped into cruise control, we can get off of cruise control and to start to put the corrections in. There's one more place that is a setup, and that is the incompletions, the conversations that we haven't completed on, the differences that we haven't negotiated, the hurts, the disappointments, the frustrations that we may have put in the shelf, tried to bury, avoid, swept under the rug. And we may need to bring the vitality and the life force back into the relationship by addressing some of those things that we've tried to put aside because we didn't know how to really deal with them properly. And that can be a real wet blanket over our aliveness, and the resentment that may have accumulated by not getting our needs met, not getting complete on these issues, can give us ammunition, justification, and rationalizations for why I have to go elsewhere to do it. I'm not going to be able to do it in the partnership that I have.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my turn.
Yeah.
Okay. So, if we can't guarantee that we have an affair-proof relationship, we can at least maximize the likelihood that affairs won't happen, or minimize, another way to put it is minimize possibilities that they might.
Mm-hmm.
So how can we do that? Well, there's a few things we can do. And one of them is to really look at some of the causes of the factors that influence us to grow apart.
Right.
Or to diminish our care and expression of care to our partner. So one of them is it just gets to be kind of habituated, that we get used to something, we get used to somebody, and it doesn't seem to require that much attention. That's an illusion that it doesn't require attention anymore because we've got this in place. Actually, it does require attention. And it doesn't mean that you have to be obsessed with worrying about what does this relationship need? What does my partner want? What is my responsibility? You don't have to be obsessive about it, but you do have to be attentive and to notice what's going on, to notice how your partner's doing, to check in with each other, to do and say things that reassure each other that you haven't forgotten them, that you haven't made something else, like a job or like a hobby or like anything, more important. So to the degree that your partner feels that they are a precious and high commodity, that they are an aspect of your life that is very high on your priority list, not a commodity, but a value, that they really feel valued, that makes it much less likely that they're going to even feel inclined to go someplace else,
Mm-hmm.
To meet their needs or to assuage their feeling of neglect. Or when we begin to feel that way, we're all somewhat vulnerable to to feeling disappointed when we don't have the kind of attention and care that most of us got into relationship to have in the first place. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing. There's a bunch of them. Let me just say one more right now. The other one is we can learn how to fight better. Mm-hmm. And that's directly related to what Linda was talking about when she was talking about unfinished business and incompletions. The reason that many of us don't finish or even start those difficult conversations sometimes where we have a grievance or we have a problem or we have a complaint and we don't want to bring it up because, well, you know where it often goes. And sometimes, often, we might feel like we're better off if I just let this thing go and not bring it up because I know he's going to get defensive. I know we're going to end up fighting. And so it seems logical to make the decision, let's just put this in the denial zone, or let's just out of sight, out of mind. So when we do that, when we take something that's essential to our experience and relevant to the relationship, and we don't deal with it, and we put it aside, there's a void in our connection. And my friend Sam Keen once told me that when we do that, that's a state of avoidance. And he broke the word avoidance down into 3 words: a void dance. So we're actually dancing around the void that we've created by not directly acknowledging and dealing with our incompletions. And when there's a void and something is missing, we're naturally inclined to want to fill that void. And if we can't fill it here because we've got an unspoken agreement that we ain't going to go there, that's a setup. And that really can be very problematic if we don't learn how to do a different dance than the void dance.
So what Charlie is speaking about becoming really skilled in handling our differences, this is part of becoming a deeply loving person, alive in the full sense of the word, fully potent, present, causal, not shrinking away from challenges. That's part of being a loving partner. And also, being a loving partner is about showing up to be fully present, speaking truth about the dark things that need to be handled, the differences, the disappointments, the frustration, and also the beauty that is the other person. Remember how exhilarating it was in the infatuation stage, in the falling in love, the discovery, how active the visionary was. We were so entranced, that we didn't even remember to eat and sleep. We could be so productive. There is a drive to want to experience that intensity of aliveness. And we don't go back to that obsessive state when we were drugged by the hormones being pumped by our brain into our bloodstream. But we can fall in love again and again and again and again, but with our feet on the ground, knowing who we are, and the beauty and the mixed baggedness of ourselves and the other person. But we can feel that aliveness that we have the need for, to want to know each other deeply, to be seen and known and accepted with all of our wonderfulness and our flaws. And so that's part of what's motivating people when they stray to somebody new, because they think that they have to have the aliveness only with the new person. And the mistaken belief is that they can't have it with the person that they're already with. And we're wanting to challenge that. Risk it. Give it a try. bring out some of the things that you may have been reticent to say. Because if you can possibly avoid the trauma of the affair being revealed, of which only 31%, the smallest group, recover from, to be able to patch it up and repair the damage, because it's a pretty severe tearing of the trust and the fabric of the relationship. And 69% of the people don't have the wherewithal to put it together after the affair. It's way better to avoid the affair in the first place, if you possibly can, by bringing the aliveness to the relationship that you have with the partner that you're with now. And we know that that requires some risking. We know that that requires some work. But from where we're viewing it from the many people that we've worked with over the 4 decades plus that we've been dealing with it, it's so worth stepping out on that edge to bring the aliveness and the vitality into the relationship that you have, if at all possible.
A lot of those people who are in the 69% category don't even believe that it's possible.
Right.
To sufficiently heal the damage that's done when there's an affair. So they carry that belief with them, and then if there is an affair that they have to deal with, they've already decided. There's no decision. They've already gotten clear that, it's over. Not because I want it to be over, but because I have a limiting, inaccurate belief that this is not something that people can recover from.
Mm-hmm.
What's the saying? Once a cheater, always a cheater. I'll never be able to trust you again. And that is how it feels when there's a violation, a betrayal at that level in a relationship. It does feel like there's no way I could ever trust you again. You've been lying to me. And if the affair has been going on for a while, the longer it has been going on for, the more entrenched that conviction can be that there's just no way. So what to do if you are in that experience? Well, first of all, just to question whether or not it's actually true that it isn't possible for us to ever heal this. Because we've dealt with an awful lot of couples who have experienced betrayal in their relationship. Having an affair is a form of betrayal, but other betrayals can be just as damaging.
Mm-hmm.
But we're talking about that one right now.
Emotional affairs can be just as damaging.
Well, even a betrayal of trust that has nothing to do with another person.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if somebody finds out that the partner has been lying to them about something.
Misconduct with money.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. We dealt with a couple one time, and he had been fired from his job, and he was so humiliated and ashamed because of that he would get up and go to work, or go to what he said was work, for quite a long time, because he didn't want to admit to his wife that he had been fired. And finally she found out, and his losing his job was nothing to her compared to her realization, oh my God, you've been lying to me for over a month, every day?
Way worse.
Way worse. So betrayal can take many forms. Now, they were able to patch that up and repair it. And they did get stronger at the broken places, because they both realized the value of honesty, the need for integrity in the relationship and in their individual lives too. And they made some serious changes. They stopped rationalizing and justifying dishonesty the way so many of us do. And when there's an affair, it's often the cover-up and the dishonesty that can be even more damaging than the relationship itself.
Mm-hmm. So I have a few questions that I want to put out to you for you to consider if you want to have a crucial conversation with your partner. Sometimes the idea of an affair is so daunting that people don't want to think about it, they don't want to talk about it, they don't want to go there. It's too scary. And so I think that it's really useful in a partnership to have no-fly zones, that this isn't a topic that's taboo to talk about. And so if you have questions like, what do you think? Do you think it's possible to affair-proof a marriage or not? Do you think it's possible to affair-proof a relationship or not? What is the level of your satisfaction with our emotional intimacy? What is the level of your satisfaction with our sexual intimacy? What is your level of satisfaction about your aliveness and vitality in your life in general? Is there a way in which we might be able to have more novelty and adventure in our life so that we are doing everything possible to keep our relationship safe? Is there more that I could be contributing in terms of bringing ideas for novel things that we could do? Are there things that you've cherished that in your imagination you would like to do one day? Could we do them now? Is too much of yours or my energy going to the kids, family, hobbies, or work? Do we need to make our relationship a higher priority? These are the kinds of conversations that couples often don't have when they're on cruise control, taking each other for granted, assuming that everything is fine, while one or both may be silently suffering that the relationship isn't quite vital enough, which leaves you at risk. So I'm inviting you to consider these questions as a starter kit. Please add your own. There may be some ones that are really important to you, and to have those deep conversations that are sometimes edgy, but they in themselves bring the aliveness to the partnership.
So, if you have any questions, feel free to email them to us. We love getting feedback on these talks, and we want to thank those of you who have been giving that to us, and we're always happy to respond. So feel free. And next week, we are going to talk about something that I just mentioned a little while ago, honesty, particularly emotional honesty. And what does that mean? And how do we practice that? And what are the challenges of doing that? What gets in our way sometimes that prevents us from being as emotionally honest as we can be? That is, to really express what we're feeling, not just our thoughts and opinions and ideas, but to take it to a deeper level, because that's what creates connection.
Mm-hmm.
So
please tell your friends who play on Facebook about our free samples that I give away every Thursday. If anybody comes to mind for you that it would be especially important for them to take a look at this one, send them a Facebook message, send them an email, give them a call, tell them in person, and say, if you have concerns about your relationship getting a little stale and boring and predictable, the Blooms have a Facebook Live telling you some ideas about how to perk it up so that it's got more vitality to it. And if you're on our Facebook network, but you're not in our email network, sign up on our website, bloomwork.com. And there's a free gift for you there if you haven't gotten it yet. It's our ebook about enlivening your relationship. It's called Going for the Gold: Tools, Practices, and Wisdoms for Creating Exemplary Relationships. So we're looking forward to seeing you next week, same time, same station, 12:30 on Thursday Pacific time. And thank you for tuning in. Tell your friends.